but until today, its origins remain a mystery.
The 2019 novel coronavirus is very unusual because it seems to spread much easier between both of us, between individuals.
Since it was first discovered in Wuhan, the capital city of China's Hubei province late last year, the virus has killed more than 1,200 people and infected at least 45,000 others worldwide.
For every single person who is affected, it seems as if there's going to be up to 3 or maybe 4 other persons who could also be affected.
大年初一那天，其实相对来说还是比较乱的，因为刚刚开始出来，大家比较恐慌，然后来的人非常多。
Wuhan and other surrounding cities have now been placed under a lockdown in a frantic effort to contain the spread of the virus. Some 16 million residents have also been effectively cut off from the outside world.
这一直因为已经很担心，一定是疫情已经到一个非常严重的情况，才会出现说封城这么一个策略。
What exactly is the 2019 novel coronavirus? Can the spread of this highly infectious disease be contained? A climate of fear has descended on Wuhan, the capital city of China's Hubei province, home to 11 million people. Many are asking, will they be the next victim? If so, when? They also can't bear the thought of losing their loved ones as a mysterious but lethal virus wreaks havoc in the city. The coronavirus has killed more than 1,200 people in just 2 months. The disease has also infected thousands of people at a staggering speed and scale that's triggering fears of a new global pandemic.
2019 novel coronavirus is very unusual. We are familiar with SARS, and we managed to control SARS in about 6 to 9 months worldwide, which is actually quite amazing. And if you look at the numbers, we had 8,000, 10,000 people all in all, and this was over several months. But if you look at what's happening to 2019 novel coronavirus, we're seeing a whole lot of numbers coming up very rapidly over in just a month.
It all began deep in the winter month of December 2019. A quiet but deadly scenario was unraveling in Wuhan city, following a mysterious illness that had stricken a handful of people with symptoms of fever and cough.
Wuhan has started off with an atypical, very unusual viral infection. And for the clinicians talk, it will be called what an atypical viral or atypical pneumonia be. You will have a typical person coming with fever, headache, a bit of cough, muscle aches. It sounds very much like a flu-like illness. But you know something is not quite right because a chest x-ray becomes abnormal. Number 2, a lot of the test swabs for the influenzas will be negative or the other viruses are negative. Number 3, you see groups of people coming with the same illness. And all of them had the same pattern.
Chinese health authorities identified the first patient who showed such symptoms on December 8th last year. The trickle rapidly sped up to infect scores of others. 2 of the earliest patients reportedly worked at the Huanan seafood wholesale market in Wuhan. The tipping point arrived hard and fast when the once innocent symptoms claimed the life of the first victim. On January 9th, 2020, the mysterious virus killed a 61-year-old man who was known to be a regular customer at the market.
at the initial investigations seems to show that a majority of the small number of cases that they had, a lot of them seem to pinpoint to that part of the market which was actually dealing with wildlife trade. And so with these kinds of information, it appears to be somehow hopping over from the wildlife. Maybe interspecies, we don't know, because all these animals are kept together in cages, and it's a nice milieu for them to hop over from one species to the other. And then from there, they can sort of, hop the species barrier and get onto humans.
China alerted the World Health Organization of a mysterious virus outbreak in Wuhan on December 31st. By the time the WHO declared the outbreak as a global emergency on January 29th, the virus has spread to all of China's 31 provinces and more than 25 countries across Asia, Europe, and North America.
When you hear a story, when you see the story, it spells deja vu. It really spells very much like the SARS which we had in 2003. And true enough, the cases became more and more, and then suddenly there was an explosion of cases.
The 2019 novel coronavirus outbreak is eerily similar to the 2002 SARS epidemic. Back then, SARS swept through the region, infecting some 8,000 people and killed 774. When it was first detected, Chinese health authorities denied it was the deadly SARS virus, the severe acute respiratory syndrome of 2002. Subsequent discoveries revealed the latest outbreak was caused by a coronavirus with 76% genetic similarity to the SARS coronavirus. The only difference is, compared to SARS, it is apparently less lethal, but far more contagious.
For every single person who is affected, it seems as if there's going to be up to 3 or maybe 4 other persons who could also be affected. So if you take 6,000, maybe there's probably at least another 20 or 30,000 people that are out there. And these are very conservative estimates because the numbers are likely to be much more exponential than that.
The 2019 novel coronavirus is very unusual because it seems to spread much easier between both of us, between individuals. Simply coming close or talking, you may actually spread the infection. Not like SARS.
Early studies suggest that the incubation period of the virus, that is, from the time of exposure to the time when signs and symptoms begin to show, is about 5 to 7 days. It looks likely that patients or carriers of the virus can infect others when they are asymptomatic, meaning when they don't have signs of being ill.
There was this asymptomatic infection and mild infections, and now we hear about people who can be infectious even during the incubation period.
The scenario seems different in the case of SARS, which appears to have lower infection rates. Infectious diseases specialist Dr. Liang Honam is very familiar with the deadly virus. He was, after all, a former SARS patient himself. He contracted the virus back in 2003 while tending to a female patient who flew into Singapore from Hong Kong.
Infection of patients with SARS happened best in the second half of the illness, after the first 7 days. In other words, if I fall sick and I can confine myself in the first 7 days, I can effectively prevent the spread of the virus to the next person. The 2019 novel coronavirus is different. You can actually find the virus in people who have no symptoms, and it's postulated by Minister of Health in China himself that these asymptomatic individuals, these individuals with no symptoms, can spread person to person. And we don't even need to wait till the 7 days before symptoms are onset. Disease may spread even before the onset of illness. This allows the virus to propagate very quickly across large swaths of area, many people, and hence we are seeing these numbers of unprecedented spread of infections.
Coronaviruses are common in many species of animals, such as camels, cattle, civet cats, and bats. On occasion, the virus strains mutate and spread from animals to humans. This jump was evident in the case of SARS in 2002, in the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS, in 2012, and now in the 2019 novel coronavirus. As it turned out, the suspected ground zero of the outbreak, the now shuttered seafood market in Wuhan, was also dealing in legal and illegal trade and consumption of exotic wildlife.
The cages do not get changed, and the poop is allowed to circulate. So you are breeding the ultimate virus that one day will adapt well to the animals that are there, that one day will adapt to the humans that keeps coming in contact. One day the right mutation will happen where the receptor fits nicely well into the humans and in turn allow person-to-person transfer.
But exactly which animal and what was the reservoir and so on and so forth, of course that will take some time for us to get to know. It took a while for us to figure that out for SARS as well. It took some 10 months, if I'm not mistaken. So this is going to go on for a bit.
The situation is evolving so quickly. The virus is getting stronger. The number of infections are likely to rise. So I think we just have to be psychologically prepared that this can get worse than SARS.
How are ordinary people reacting? How are the healthcare workers on the front line coping?
一直都没有喝水，没有吃饭，这样子熬过来的。
因为那段时间其实整个人状态都不是特别好，一直都有担心。然后4点多钟起来的时候，看到封城的那个消息，我马上给我妈发，然后打电话。我记得我那个电话一开口就是哭。
This match may hold the key. What time is history of the United States?
Unexplained and Unexplored. Wednesday on Discovery Channel. Deep in the heart of the Indian jungle. It's one man's mission.
Discovery is all about adventure.
To unravel the man behind the legend.
Prepare yourself. It's going to blow your mind.
Into the World with Bear Grylls and superstar Rajnikant premieres 23rd March on Discovery Channel. Bear witness to a showdown like nothing you've seen before. Bear, Tuesdays on Discovery Channel. Almost 2,000 kilometers of international borders, dozens of entry points, hundreds of thousands of people, and all sorts of suspicious luggage, drug smuggling, and the illegal transportation of animals and goods are their daily business. Will the Spanish Civil Guard be able to contain this madness? Border Control in Spain, Fridays on Discovery Channel.
It's a battle for survival.
What we have is a ticking biological time bomb. Ebola, smallpox, influenza viruses have the capability of evolving. There are new strains coming up.
We are looking for the world's most deadly viruses.
This is critical for the ongoing global security of the world.
Invisible Killers, Tuesdays on Discovery Channel.
2020, the number of reported cases of those infected by the novel coronavirus in China has begun to soar. Hospitals have been struggling to cope with people suspected of contracting the deadly virus. Resources were also stretched to the limit as the number of patients with fever and breathing difficulties kept growing every single day.
因为我觉得作为一个护士，我觉得在这种时刻我们是责无旁贷的，一直都没有喝水，没有吃饭，这样子熬过来的。
所以到现在我们是到现在为止，我们基本上是每天都在工作，参与这个防控工作。因为我每天都是在工作，我们不用这个防控工作，我明天也是工作10到12个小时。反正这个用对我们医生来说，工作这么长时间不是很大的问题。
By this time, cases of the novel coronavirus had found its way to major Chinese cities far away from the epicenter. Beijing in the north and Shenzhen in the south. Zhou Cui-tiong is a senior nurse at a pediatric ward in Shenzhen. When she was first alerted about the major outbreak, she quickly signed up to be a volunteer with the infectious diseases department. Even though she's not trained in dealing with infectious diseases, she took it in her stride. She felt compelled to help her colleagues who have been overwhelmed by the sheer number of people seeking medical help.
因为这个时候感染科发热门诊本来的护士是很少的，他们只有3个人，那肯定是需要全院护理人员来支援他们。
When she learned about the virus outbreak, it was just days before the Chinese New Year holidays. Many of the hospital staff were already on leave. That contributed to the shortage of healthcare workers, and it was a matter of time before chaos started to surface in the already rapidly deteriorating situation.
大年初一那天，其实相对来说还是比较乱的，因为刚刚开始出来，大家比较恐慌，然后来的人非常多。当天来的人，我是值白班，8点到16点，当时来了，有100多个人。当然看诊的没那么多，看诊放过去给医生看诊的估计有80左右。但是来了100多人，为什么有些人没看呢？是因为有些人是没有任何症状，没有流行病学史，然后他们也过来看了。因为很多市民是因为恐慌，然后担心在地铁上啊、公交车上接触了类似的患者，然后跑过来要求筛查这样子的情况。
The resources in the hospital are overwhelmed. There have been many videos that we shared on social media about what's happening in China and the hospitals. And as a healthcare worker, I pray for the healthcare workers in China because they are going through a difficult time and on their faces are fatigue, exhaustion. I just cannot take the next day forward.
There were emotionally trying moments for Joe, including one occasion when she had to separate a child who's been infected with the virus from her parents. But she had to be firm for the sake of their own safety.
其实是有的，就像之前住在我们预定区那边有一个51床这样子的一个小孩，他爸爸妈妈是从武汉回来的，爸爸妈妈没有症状，但是回来之后小孩子发烧了，小孩子发烧之后。然后我们是因为现在形势是比较严峻，然后我们是劝他爸爸妈妈是不要待在病房的，然后呢就只能由奶奶过来照顾，然后爸爸妈妈非常的焦虑，然后但是真的是我们真的就很不忍心叫他回去，但是又不得不这么做，就是为了保护大家所有人的安全。
January 20th was a critical turning point in the way authorities dealt with the virus outbreak. For weeks after the virus first surfaced, authorities had insisted that the mystery virus was restricted to the animal vector. On that day, however, China's renowned and respected epidemiologist Dr. Zhong Naoshan dropped the bombshell. In a TV interview, he confirmed cases of human-to-human transmission of the deadly coronavirus. That dramatically altered the way China dealt with the outbreak. In a bold and unprecedented move, China put the city of Wuhan, with a population of 11 million people, under quarantine. All roads to the city were sealed off, and public transportation was shut down. The lockdown was expanded to the larger Hubei province, with some 60 million people.
The Chinese government has at least tried to restrict inflow and outflow into the province itself. Travel outside China itself has been constrained, which has helped to at least contain the flow of people. They have extended the holiday period for the Chinese New Year as well. In a situation like this where you have an epidemic, mass hysteria can actually cause more problem than anything else. So sharing information earlier would have been a bit better.
I think it's actually a very good strategy. And I think that they could only do this in China.
Still, there are many Wuhan natives who are worried about the fate of their loved ones still trapped in the city. 22-year-old Liu Luyuan is one of them. She has been working in Beijing for the last 1 year and was looking forward to return to Wuhan to celebrate the New Year with her family. But the long-awaited homecoming failed to materialize after news broke, confirming evidence of human-to-human transmissions. When her mother called her and told her not to return to Wuhan, she was heartbroken. Going home for the New Year was something she was eagerly looking forward to after being away from her family for a year.
是在钟南山院士那个采访，就是说会有人传人这个情况以后，我妈晚上赶紧给我打了一个电话，我记得特别深刻，是大概2点多钟，她跟我说，要不你真的别回来了吧，我思前想后，我觉得你就还是在北京待着吧，因为我是29号回去，然后初5就回来，她觉得太折腾，而且存在一个人传人的风险，我当时还有点感冒，所以就觉得要不就待在北京会更安全一点。我一开始是不愿意就是待在北京的，还是想回家，但是因为家里一直坚持说就留北京比较安全，就没有回去了。
She spent the New Year alone in Beijing. But that has not put her mind at ease as she kept thinking of her parents' safety and welfare.
基本上是保持1天2个视频，就是中午和晚上大概饭点的这个时间，然后跟他们视频看一下吃的怎么样啊，然后现在情况怎么样，然后跟他们再三的 check 有没有出门，就一定不能出门。有，我是4点多钟的时候起来，就是噩梦惊醒，因为那段时间其实整个人状态都不是特别好，一直都有担心。然后4点多钟起来的时候，看到封城的那个消息，我马上给我妈发，然后打电话。我记得我那个电话一开口就是哭，就一直哭，因为已经很担心，一定是疫情已经到一个非常严重的情况，才会出现说封城这么一个策略。然后当时也问我妈妈说，那我们接下来是怎么办？物资够不够啊？然后我看见网上有人说什么赶紧逃离啊什么的，我妈就说哪儿都不去，就在家待着。
It tells me that the amount of spread there is before the lockdown was unprecedented, very rapid. Many people were falling very sick, and they were going to get out of Wuhan for the Chinese New Year festivity. And from there, the spread will be even unprecedented. So what the Chinese government did was correct, and it's the right thing to do. It seems very heartless. It seems unimaginable, but it's the right thing to do.
When SARS broke out in 2002, the world was caught unaware by just how lethal the virus was and how fast it could spread. Today, the rapid spread of the 2019 novel coronavirus is just as alarming.
A rapidly growing and developing country like Malaysia faces numerous challenges associated with sustainability. The rising social, environmental and economic challenges put the environment and further development of the country in jeopardy. Hi, I'm Gurpreet Singh. We drive entrepreneurial collective impact through value-based innovation. Our mission is to maximize the potential of society in solving social, environmental and economic challenges through 21st century education. Whether you're an educator or a student for life, we offer anyone to come and share ideas, pick up new skills and make things. We offer hands-on approaches to learning, team building and creative discovery through our lab experiences. From food technology to metal fabrication, we got you covered. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We merely borrow it from our children. The world is ours. Let's build a sustainable future together.
Just days after the World Health Organization was alerted to the possible outbreak of a mysterious virus in Wuhan on December 31st, 2019, countries responded by ramping up their internal defenses against the possible spread of the virus. Singapore, for example, implemented thermal screenings at the airports for all travelers coming from Wuhan. It has since banned all Chinese visitors and foreigners with a recent history of travel to China. Today, on almost every continent, countries have taken similar steps of closing their borders to flights and foreign visitors from China as the number of infections outside China grows. There are more than 45,000 confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus in more than 25 other countries and territories.
There are many problems, but one of the chief ones will be the global travel. Because, even if you say let's not get people coming in from China, but then there are many people who are already affected outside of China, and these people are still traveling everywhere. And so we are still vulnerable. That is actually going to lead to a lot of asymptomatic people around the globe who cannot display symptoms, and then they have the possibility to transmit. Now, how infectious and how transmissible they are, we don't know.
Painful memories of SARS have left a mark on the two Asian cities, Hong Kong and Singapore. They both suffered the biggest brunt of the respiratory illness outside mainland China. There were 299 deaths in Hong Kong and 33 in Singapore. But that painful experience has helped the region deal with the new deadly virus more effectively.
The Hong Kongers were fabulous. The Hong Kongers administrators knew what to do. They were not hesitant in shutting down schools, declaring emergencies, and locking down the individuals. And in Singapore, where I am very, very intimately aware, we have been having annual drills of SARS-like viruses. We have been preparing this for the last 16 years. And enough said, we are now ready for the 2019 novel coronaviruses. You can see books and stacks of protocols that are written, what to do if this happens, what to do if you're not, where to identify areas of quarantine, where should people rest, where do we get extra staff from, what happens if the school will be closed, what happens if nobody can work, where do you get this extra manpower. All these questions are answered way before this outbreak.
Dr. Yu Zhejian is the chief physician of the Infectious Diseases Department in Union Hospital in Shenzhen. When he first heard of the mysterious virus, he was taken by surprise.
我们的同事也都在办公室看到微信上面报道，武汉发生了新型冠状病毒的这个疫情，大家都觉得非常惊讶。当时只是觉得可能我们又多了一种传染病，没有料到疫情会快速的扩大。
He then set up an emergency response team at the hospital and recruited volunteer colleagues from other departments.
我是专人防控小组里面的成员，我跟医务科的是组织者，因为我们应对这场疫情，那么光靠我们传染科、感染科还有发热门诊，单独人力量是不够的。
Another innovative strategy by Dr. Yu was to set up a telemedicine unit. The idea was to provide critical information to the people who were unsure if they were really ill, as well as to ease the burden of hospital staff due to the escalating number of admissions.
然后另外就是我们也按照现在的这个要求，开展了互联网医院的网上咨询平台。那么通过这个网上咨询，能够更加便捷的服务我们的患者身上。那么昨天一天的我们网上咨询量就有1600多条。那么这个网上互联网咨询平台的开建，极大的方便了患者的这个咨询，同时有利于消除公众对这个新型冠状病毒的疑虑。
因为新型冠状病毒感染这个疫情爆发以来，有大量的发热病人涌入到了我们的门诊去就诊，给所有的这个接诊的医生、一线的接诊医生造成了一个很大的工作压力。在这个基础上的话，我们在前天晚上就紧急上线了这个关于疫情的一个免费咨询活动。我们可以除了在网页端进行回复之外，我们还可以用手机端进行回复。所以在我们的吃饭时间或者是休息的时间，我们就带着手机随时在线回复的。晚上的话，我们是6点钟左右就下班，但是我们带着手机端可以随时在家进行回复。然后实际上的话，我们最近几天都是工作到8点9点我们才回去的。然后的话，我们对外是说10点钟就结束了这个夜间10点钟就结束了这个咨询。实际上只要我们有时间，10点钟之后甚至是凌晨，我们都还在用手机端回复。
Zhao Cui-Chung is also glad to be of assistance. The pediatric nurse even volunteered to go for emergency training to help handle patients who suffer from the new pneumonia-like virus.
知识培训的很好，我是一个儿科的护士，我前后接受了这种新型肺炎的培训，真的是不下于8次了。就这段时间，从年前到现在，不停的在接受这种培训，这种还有防控措施这些培训了很多次。就医院非常重视这方面，也一再的强调员工要零感染。
China's continuing efforts to ramp up treatment and containment measures also included the construction of 2 new hospitals in Wuhan. They were completed in under 2 weeks. Authorities recalled thousands of construction workers during the Chinese New Year holidays, doubled and tripled their salary, and they worked around the clock to build the 2 hospitals which provided 2,500 beds. Still, many challenges remain. At the heart of all containment strategy is the understanding of what doctors call the pyramid.
At the tip of the pyramid, you have the persons who are symptomatic. Then at the bottom of the pyramid, you have people who are, less symptomatic, and then you have the asymptomatic, big, huge chunk at the bottom of the pyramid. So in order to understand how you're going to contain, you need to know the big pyramid. But here, if you focus only on the iceberg at the top, you are going to get hit by what's below.
Medicine has taught us with limited resources, you only treat those who are the sickest. So the sickest will get admitted, and this will be the top of the pyramid. And what we are seeing perhaps are just the top 10-20% of the patients. And for the rest of it, 80%, we are not seeing, we are not treating, we are not quarantining. Instead, we are releasing them back into the public, where they can in turn reinfect others. What we are not seeing will be the greater base at the pyramid, which are easily 40 times more than what we are seeing now. These are the ones where there are active propagation of the virus.
Since the World Health Organization declared the novel coronavirus outbreak as a global emergency, international response has been swift. All flights to and from Wuhan and the larger Hubei province have been banned, and citizens have also been advised against all non-essential travels to China. Scores of nations, including Indonesia, Philippines, Japan, South Korea, New Zealand, France, Turkey and the US have scrambled to evacuate their citizens from Wuhan city as China struggles to come to grips with the outbreak.
世
Should China be blamed for the latest epidemic? During the 2003 SARS outbreak, the government took some 4 months before announcing to the world about the severity of the crisis. It was then accused of withholding information and covering up. In the current epidemic, it took the government about 1 month to declare after the first case was reported on December 8, 2019. By January 12th, Chinese scientists had already identified the virus as the new coronavirus similar to SARS. It has since shown speed and political resolve to control and contain the outbreak.
The Chinese government has at least tried to restrict inflow and outflow into the province itself. Travel outside China itself has been constrained, which has helped to at least contain the flow of people. They have extended the holiday period for the Chinese New Year as well. So these are measures that are slightly on the brighter side. So there are some positive signs where the Chinese government has done some positive things.
I think we have to go back to the root of the problem, whatever emerging or re-emerging infection it is, and to understand the dynamics and the nature in which it actually crossed over to the human species. Where exactly did we go wrong? Why are we allowing this issue of wildlife and humans to come close to each other? We should abandon that.
And as the novel coronavirus spreads, there's also growing fear that the deadly pathogens or viruses can mutate and spread to become a more effective killing machine.
Deep in the heart of the Indian jungle, it's one man's mission.
Discovery is all about adventure.
To unravel the man behind the legend.
Prepare yourself. It's going to blow your mind.
Into the Wild with Bear Grylls and superstar Rajnikant premieres 23rd March on Discovery Channel.
Elsa, Equinox is not what it seems.
Does it look bad?
No, you hesitated.
For one special prize, rent free on demand or go to channel 481.
What you have is a ticking biological time bomb. Ebola, smallpox, influenza viruses have the capability of evolving. There are new strains coming up.
We are looking for the world's most deadly viruses.
This is critical for the ongoing global security for the world.
Invisible Killers, Tuesdays on Discovery Channel.
It's unbelievable. That's awesome. This map may hold a key.
It just looks mysterious.
It literally says buried ship.
This looks like 3 knives coming out of the sailboat.
What is that? That looks big. We could be rewriting the legacy of an American hero who was murdered.
Unexplained and unexplored. Wednesdays on Discovery Channel. Bear witness to a showdown like nothing you've seen before. Bear, Tuesdays on Discovery Channel.
A UFO sighting in Chile?
Unidentified flying objects. The Air Force has recently made public an archive of UFO reports and investigations.
We're going to use big data technology to find the truth. This is a declassified top secret Air Force document admitting that they are seeing possible extraterrestrials in our sky.
Do they have anyone? Do they have any propulsion system?
Contact. Wednesdays on Discovery Channel.
It's been more than 2 months since the first case of the new novel coronavirus was discovered on December 8, 2019. Streets in the typically bustling Chinese cities are eerily quiet and deserted. Such an unusual scene is now a common sight in the country, as fears grow over the spread of the deadly coronavirus, turning the once vibrant metropolis into virtual ghost towns.
而且很多人自觉的就在家里隔离，很多那些公园啊、景点啊都已经关闭了，我们就一直在家窝着，也没什么出门。
Liu's response is typical for many Chinese. The fear of catching the virus has forced many people to avoid crowded places or engage in outdoor activities.
说实话，因为我没太出门，所以没太感受到。但是有一个生活细节，就是我妈当时跟我打电话的时候，她说你在北京就不要再说武汉话了。你跟我打电话的时候，不要说武汉话，可能你周围的人经过的时候会觉得有一些异样，或者是怎么样。
She is, however, more worried about the situation involving her parents and her friends. Despite all the assurances, they know that there's only so much they can do to protect themselves against the marauding virus, not knowing if and when it will hit them.
我觉得他们一定是有的，但是他们作为父母不会跟我就是过多的去流露，可能我接受到的更多的焦虑也好，或者说真实的那种紧张的情绪，更多的是来自于我同龄的朋友。他们可能比如说有的也是刚刚工作，然后提前就回家了，现在也在武汉，还有的就是一直就在武汉，还在读研，或者是就在武汉工作。那我们之间的沟通可能会来得更加真实一些，会直接跟我说现在的情绪是怎么样的呀，很紧张啊，很焦虑啊，然后可能打不到车呀，等等等等。但是你问父母，父母永远都是没事儿，很安全，不要担心。
The reality is, fear and anxiety continue to grip the residents of Wuhan. Despite the best efforts by the authorities to try and keep the virus at bay, the death toll shows no signs of slowing down. Meanwhile, the scientific community is now racing against time to try and find a vaccine that could help fight and prevent further spread of the disease. Is there a chance that an effective vaccine will be found anytime soon?
The good thing about the current novel coronavirus is that we can make use of existing knowledge of the SARS coronavirus vaccine and apply the same principles to the 2019 novel coronavirus. What they would have to do now is to actually design it. Designing is relatively easy. Grow it and show that while growing, the vaccine does exactly what it's supposed to do. The prototypes will then need to be manufactured in large quantities so that it can be given to a large group of people.
But the bad news is, according to experts, a vaccine for the novel coronavirus will take months to develop and manufacture. It will have to go through several clinical trials before the vaccine is ready for use in time to respond to the epidemic.
It will take easily 9 to 12 months. Even if the vaccines are available now at this various moment, it will take several months for the quantities to be made. We're talking about several 100 million doses for the people in China, for the people in Asia, and for the rest of the world. This will take time.
In the meantime, short of an effective and easily available vaccine, immediate preventive measures have to be aggressively enforced. China has since banned the popular wildlife trade until the health crisis is over. There are also increasing calls from the international scientific community for the ban to be made permanent.
I think that is to some extent what happened after SARS. Because look at the wildlife trading. You know, if more things were done back 15 plus 17 years ago, maybe, anyway, we can't turn the clock back. Then and these animals, we are not meant to be living side by side. Viruses like this exist in wildlife. You put the situation of man and wildlife together in this kind of situations for a protracted period of time, these things can happen. And I think, we're just tempting fate.
We tend to eat anything that flies, swims, or crawls. And when we bring these animals into our dinner table, we bring the viruses over along as well. Perhaps you, as the diner, will not need to see it because you'll be destroyed by the cooking. But the chef in preparation, the animal handler, the market that has to look after all these animals will invariably be exposed to the virus. And we saw that in SARS 2003. In 2003, they realized that the animal handlers encountered a form of SARS, a variant of SARS, before the original one came around, such that they developed immunity to SARS. And one way to counter this is what the Chinese government has done. It stopped exotic animals from being onto the dining table. Perhaps we need to really look at what we eat.
But as the battle rages on to bring the virus under control, there are still many unknowns and questions that need to be answered. For example, how lethal is this virus? Where did it originally come from? How infectious is it? Will the coronavirus that's now spreading with frightening speed in China become a global pandemic? The reality is, the virus has so far killed more than 1,200 people. The death toll has even surpassed SARS, both in the number of fatalities and confirmed cases within a much shorter period. Still, there's hope that the worst will soon be over. It's just a question of how and when that will happen. For those currently at the front line of the battle against the novel coronavirus, the risk is still far greater than previously imagined, given the scale of the infections. Still, nurses like Joe is confident that China will turn a corner and that the battle will be won, sooner or later.
我觉得我很有信心，因为大家都可以看到现在那个宣传做得非常好。目前公共场所，包括地铁、公交、超市，包括小区，每个人都戴上了口罩。其实这就很大的阻挡了病毒的那种传播。我觉得这点非常有效，而且很多人自觉的就在家里隔离，很多那些公园啊、景点啊都已经关闭了。从这点出发，反正我感觉非常有信心。
作为一个武汉人来说啊，我觉得我们这一次其实是做出了挺好的一个举措，也是一个正式断腕的一个决心，做出封城这样的举措。而且包括各个城市，比如说像河南，我了解到他们在疫情的防控上面做的是非常及时，而且非常行之有效的。所以我觉得这次在政府的这个应对上面来说呢，还是比较好的。
In the long term, when the dust settles, it's going to take a lot of soul searching. It appears that so long as humans interact in close proximity with animals, future outbreaks of infectious diseases are likely to occur. Since the virus started wreaking havoc in China last December, no one knows when the surge will peak and start to decline. One can only hope that it will be soon.
If there is a best case scenario, it would potentially lead to a drop in numbers. But I haven't seen that. We can only begin to discuss that once we see the numbers actually falling. As of now, we are still seeing the cases coming up and the mortality, of course, as more cases come in. So until and unless we see that numbers mitigating, we can't predict what's going to happen in the region. Yeah, so this is going to go on for a while.
We'll walk through and walk through. We will no doubt lose some of our comrades, our relatives, our close ones. the world will come out stronger. The world will come out better. Okay, we will remember those who are lost, but with this remembrance, we will prevent you loss from happening.
Coming up on How Do They Do It? How do they